to introduce our speaker of the day today, Ms. Dena Buchanan. Dena is a regular attending member of the chapel and is a past member of the board of directors. She has always had a fascination with the unknown, even as a child. And it was due to this natural curiosity that started her on her current journey of enlightenment and betterment as a person. Having received her bachelor's degree in Metaphysical Sciences in 2013 and her master's degree in Divinity in 2014, she covets knowledge in an effort to understand all expanses of metaphysics, quantum physics, and the riddle that is the universe and the source of all things. She's inspired by Nikola Tesla's philosophy of thinking of everything around you in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. It also doesn't hurt that Tesla said he got a lot of his ideas from beings not of this world. Dena also believes in aliens, as described in her blog at metaphysicsme.com. Dena is a thrilled and devoted grandmother to 6 grandchildren, all girls, which remarkably includes 2 sets of identical twins, one each from her son and daughter. She and her husband BJ are ardent animal lovers and work together with their son Brandon in the family business. Please join us in welcoming Dena Buchanan as our guest speaker today.
Buttons. Hi, how's everybody doing? Sorry about that. So look, I'm really excited to talk to you about my subject today. I've been putting it off, and even though it's mentioned in my intro, I was told there's a few things that you're not supposed to speak of in polite company. One is money. One's politics, and one's aliens. But guess what we're talking about today? We're going to talk a little bit about aliens, just a little bit. I think you guys have gotten off long enough, all right? But I know what you're thinking, but Dena, aliens aren't metaphysical. Well, no way they are, but you're right. So to stay congruent with our protocol, I'm going to attach my talk to somebody else that's all about metaphysics. You guys actually know who I'm talking about. This is a small town boy that kind of made it big. He's a really great person, and I think once I give you his moniker, you'll know who it is. He's called the Sleeping Prophet. I'm speaking of Edgar Cayce. I am just fascinated with him, and he too believes in aliens, but he has a more in-depth reason for doing so. So in his beginning, Edgar Cayce was a 20th century psychic and medical clairvoyant. He lived from 1877 to 1945, growing up on a farm in Kentucky, and he moved to Virginia Beach towards the end of his life. Where he opened up the Association for Research and Enlightenment. Has anybody been there? I've been there a couple of times. Awesome. Yeah. They have a lot of stuff online now too, so you don't have to go physically, but why wouldn't you want to? They have a beautiful meditation room on the 4th floor that looks out on the ocean, and it's fantastic. This was a lifelong dream of his. This is something that he's always wanted to do. He wanted to open up a hospital, not only to help the sick and feeble, but also one that promoted his idea that you have to incorporate the trifecta of body, mind, and spirit approach to get people healthy. He was called the father of holistic medicine due to his introduction of topics such as meditation, spiritual growth, auras, and simple holistic health, like going for walks, drinking more water, and eating less to be healthier. He also, do that at least once a time. He also predicted that one day we'll be able to use a drop of blood to diagnose disease. And of course, we do that now with blood tests. Ever since he was a small boy, he had a strong connection to the other side, having watched his grandfather pass away. They were on the farm in Kentucky, and he and his grandfather and his grandmother were actually all very close. He was riding horseback with his grandfather. His grandfather put him down and took the horse into a pond to kind of cool him off. Something spooked the horse, and unfortunately, he got scared, and the grandfather fell off, but his foot was stuck in the stirrup, and he passed away. But that wasn't the end of Edgar and his grandfather's relationship. They spoke often, and he actually told his parents that he speaks to his grandfather, and he also has imaginary friends that he told them were spirits from the other side. So even from a young age, he had the gift. As a devout Christian, Edgar read Loved to read the Bible and read it religiously every day of his life. I have cause for laughter. He read it religiously. I know, it's so bad. Really need to give up my side job as a comedian. So when he was older, he actually taught Sunday school. He enjoyed reading the Bible so much that he had a little fort on his farm next to a brook, and he would sit out there for hours. One morning, he heard a female voice and looked up to see a beautiful feminine being with wings. She told him that he had very strong intuition, and they would like to train him to make it stronger. She asked him what he wanted to do with his gift, and he stated, "I want to help people." Her reply was simply, "We can help you do that." Later that week, Edgar had a spelling test and was trying to study at the family table with his father, who called himself the Squire. And both Edgar and his father were getting increasingly frustrated when Edgar finally asked for a 5-minute break. He laid his head down on the table and again heard the comforting female voice. She said to him, "We can help you. Go to sleep with the spelling book under your pillow, and we will help you with your studies by absorbing all the words in the book." He did so, and the next day he went to school and he aced his test, to the surprise of all. Through the guidance of this angel, he was actually able to skip a grade, although he never went past the 8th grade. There are so many interesting things about Edgar Cayce that I could go into, but since I'm trying to keep this from being a 30-page dissertation, I'll stick to the samplings of things that he was known for best and give you a little bit of extra information on that. So he was a remote viewing healer. Even though Herodotus, the Greek historian and geographer, also called the father of history, because he was the first historian to properly record the events that took place during the time, has been credited as being the first to use remote viewing. Later in the 1970s, the CIA would team up with a program conducted by the American Institute for Research, a nonprofit private research organization interested in operational application of remote viewing phenomena in intelligence gathering. It was Cayce who would use this practice daily in helping treat people from illnesses and ailments by laying on a couch in his office, putting himself in a self-trance, a skill that the angel taught him, and one that he picked up instantly. And with only a little information from the person that was leading the readings, usually his father, later his wife, and then later his secretary, they would tell him the person's name and where the person was. And that's it. Most of the time, they weren't in the same room. Sometimes they weren't even in the same city or state. So with that little bit of information, he could diagnose and provide healing procedures to them, even though he had no medical training. Oftentimes, his voice would change, and he even spoke in Italian when an Italian immigrant needed his help, although he's never spoken Italian before. He never remembered these events. When he woke up, his father, wife, and later secretary would keep meticulous notes of these encounters, later referred to as readings. There's a story about a time he was going to do a reading, and he was told the gentleman's name, and that the gentleman was staying at a certain hotel. And anytime he started to do the readings, he would start off by saying, "We see the body." And that comes into play in a few minutes. I'll explain that. We see the body. But this time he stated, "We don't see the body." And what had happened is the young man was on his way to the hotel, got stuck on the train. There was an accident, so he wasn't actually at the hotel room. And Edgar was explaining this in that voice that he uses when he's in his self-trance. And then as soon as the gentleman showed up, he gave him the reading. When they contacted him later on that day, he did confirm that that's exactly what happened. He wasn't at the hotel room. He was indeed stuck on the train behind some kind of accident. So that's pretty cool. That's the epitome of remote viewing, right? So Cayce gave about 14,000 readings in his lifetime, and they're compiled within 5 categories: health-related information, philosophy and reincarnation. He did find out that everybody in his family had previous lives, not just one reincarnation, but many, even his children. So dreams and dream interpretation, ESP and psychic phenomena, and spiritual growth, and then meditation and prayer was the last one. There's another story of when his beloved wife Gertrude contracted tuberculosis. Now, in those days, that was a kiss of death. What are we talking about? Like the 1930s, before the 1940s. So Gertrude asked, "Please give me a reading," and he was reticent to do so because what if he gave information that would harm this person that he loved more than anybody in the world? But she was going to pass away anyway if he didn't do something. So he gave her a reading, and there were suggestions that were given in the reading for her getting better. And he had a formula that he gave her, and they actually did, and it worked. And the formula was this: you had to get a 2-gallon charred oak keg, and you had to put heated apple brandy in it and inhale the fumes deeply into your lungs. All she did is inhale the fumes coming out of the keg, and she recovered from tuberculosis. He used this cure to save many other people also. Many of the natural remedies Cayce prescribed are still in use today, and in fact, he was one of the first people to introduce holistic medicine to the Western world, in which body, mind, and spirit are considered together in the management and prevention of illnesses. Psychic medium. Cayce made incredible predictions about events that would change the course of humanity. A prodigy in numerous psychic arts from a young age, Edgar Cayce quickly rose to fame in the early 20th century as one of the most sought after clairvoyants of his time. Cayce first became known nationally through a story on the cover of the New York Times of fall in 1910. The headline was, "Illiterate Man Becomes a Doctor When Hypnotized." He wasn't illiterate, but he definitely wasn't a doctor either. He went from being a fairly humble farm boy to being a superstar, and it's astonishing how quickly he became famous and influential, but he didn't want it. All he really wanted to do was to help people. In fact, a lot of people sent money and he returned it. He wasn't looking for money. He was just looking to help as many people as he could. Although he did not aspire to it, Edgar Cayce found both fame and fortune in the 1920s. Word quickly spread about his ability to not only diagnose and treat illnesses, but also to predict the future, which nobody has been able to do since before Edgar Cayce or since Edgar Cayce. They're usually one or the other. Cayce's eerily accurate readings drew the attention of thousands of believers, including high-profile clients like Thomas Edison, Harry Houdini, and George Gershwin. There's even evidence that President Woodrow Wilson had a reading with him, and indeed other high-ranking members of the U.S. government. Cayce also claimed to receive visions concerning major world events, and one in particular would forever change public perception of his supposed talents. It was a prediction of a pivotal moment in U.S. history, the stock market crash in 1929. In 1925, Edgar told his biggest financial supporter and friend to sell all of his stocks. He started to unload the stocks, but the market kept getting better, and he didn't listen to Edgar, and of course he lost everything, like everybody did during that time. In a matter of weeks, the world sank into the Great Depression, just as Edgar Cayce predicted, but this would not be the only time that Edgar's visions seemed to accurately predict major events in history. In the mid-1930s, Edgar forecast a great conflict on the horizon of world events. This was often seen as the invasion of Poland and the events that led to the Second World War. Early on in his career as a psychic, Edgar Cayce would become disturbed when a reading predicted something ominous, whether it had to do with a single individual or an event that affected the entire world. As a devout Christian, he worried about these visions that they might be coming from a dark place. And he actually tried to fight it for a while. But of course he couldn't, even though it was deeply unsettling and scary for him. At a certain point, he fully committed to it. But there was a number of years where he was picking it up and putting it down, wanting to have nothing to do with it. A constant question that he was working with is this okay? Can I devote myself to this type of work and still be the type of Christian that I know myself to be? As more and more time went on, to hear people say to him how he literally saved their life or their children's life or their family member's life, he knew that he had to pick it back up, and it was really important for him. In 1931, Cayce told his followers that he now knew the source of his remarkable insights and that they came to him from a vast otherworldly repository of information called the Akashic Records. The Akashic Record, which is Hindu terminology, is this ethereal cloud that exists throughout the universe in which any and all knowledge, past, present, and future, is contained. Some individuals are able to tap into this timeless resource of knowledge, but of course, we're all able to do so. In Hindu mythology, there are several instances where conversation takes place between some entity up in the sky and here on Earth. And that conversation, that voice is called Akash Vani. Akash meaning sky, Vani meaning speech. So in the case of Edgar Cayce, he's hearing some voices from up there while he's channeling, trying to get to the source. Throughout history, there's numerous famous examples of people who profess to access knowledge from another realm. The great 15th century artist and inventor, Leonardo da Vinci, wrote that he would stare at a flickering light from a candle to enter a meditative state in which he could access new ideas. In the early 20th century, genius mathematician Ramanujan, is that right, claimed that complex equations were communicated to him in his dreams. And one of the pioneers of electricity, my boy, Nikola Tesla, said that his revelation for how to harness alternating current came to him in a moment when he felt that some outside source had entered his consciousness. Nikola Tesla claimed that he would envision these many inventions that he created. So he, like Cayce, was tapping into the Akashic Record. It is believed. It's not only great thinkers that are tapping into something that's beyond our understanding. People of a certain intellect and that are open to it are also able to see beyond, like we know. It's possible that Is it possible that this was a unique ability only to certain individuals or mystics? Is it by chance or were they chosen for it? Because we know that Edgar Cayce had an incredible visitation from what he described as an angel. Could this connection be something that was given to him by a higher genius, a higher intelligence? Perhaps by extraterrestrials or extra-dimensional beings. Yes, of course, absolutely. Because of these psychic abilities, he was able then to communicate all kinds of esoteric ideas, but yet they were coming from a very normal person. You have to wonder if Edgar Cayce wasn't chosen, say, by the extraterrestrials to be a messenger to mankind. Edgar Cayce calls a gathering. All right, so he's got a really interesting life, and it's just way too much to go into, but everything wasn't peaches and cream for him growing up. He had some sadnesses. His first child passed away, and he purchased land in Ohio and was trying to use his talents to get oil from this land that he purchased because he wanted to raise money to open this hospital. And it seemed like whenever he was trying to make money by using his gifts, they wouldn't come. So he basically walked away from that flat broke. He had investors for the hospital, but due to infighting, they pulled his money away, and he'd only had it open for like 3 years. So he had all of these things against him, and this hospital was just like the only thing he really ever wanted because he wanted to help people. So he got the hospital made and had it for about 3 years, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy when he called a gathering of his closest supporters for a series of special readings. Up until that time, Cayce's readings more often involved future predictions or remedies to heal the sick, but on this occasion, he called upon to access the ancient past. One of Edgar Cayce's fascinating readings was about the Great Pyramid of Egypt. The Great Pyramid is on the dollar bill, and so everybody, of course, has a dollar bill, knows about it. One of the most famous structures in the world. All right, full disclosure, I'm on page 8. I lost some of my things when I was printing it out. My computer was getting wonky with me. So a lot of this stuff is from Ancient Aliens. I don't want to be accused of plagiarizing. So Ancient Aliens, season 9, episode 5, Edgar Cayce. So if you guys ever watch that, which I do religiously, this is going to sound familiar. So that's why the voice has changed too. But I wanted to try to give you guys as much information instead of coming up here and just twiddling my thumbs. So now we're into Ancient Aliens, which is a really good show. If you don't already watch it, watch it. All right, so let's see. So the 480-foot tall Great Pyramid of Giza consists of over 2 million stone blocks weighing a total of 6 million tons. Incredible. It stands perfectly level and is more closely aligned to true north than any other structure on Earth, built either in ancient or modern times. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a marvel of architecture, something that you cannot replicate today. In fact, I would think it would be darn near impossible to replicate even with all of our technology. Which makes you wonder, how did they have this knowledge and what kind of knowledge they had? According to most Egyptologists, the Great Pyramid of Giza was constructed. There's a reason why I'm going into this, so just stay with me. According to most Egyptologists, the Great Pyramid of Giza was constructed during a 20-year period by order of the pharaoh Khufu, sometime around 2500 BC. But when Edgar Cayce was asked about the origins of the Great Pyramid in 1932, he placed the iconic structure at a much earlier date. Edgar Cayce said that it was actually built somewhere around 10,490 BC, 8,000 years before traditional Egyptologists said it was constructed. Now, this is in the 1930s, so that was a pretty astonishing statement to make. Cayce also claimed that the Sphinx, oh, this is cool, that the Sphinx, which sits near the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau, dates to the same period, which geologist Robert Schoch believes is accurate based on his own examination of the monument and water erosion that could be found around the base of the structure. After studying the Sphinx in great detail, looking at the weathering and erosion, he's come back to the conclusion that the Sphinx has its origins going back to before the end of the last ice age, so around 10,000 or so BC. This happens to be the date that Edgar Cayce was talking about. During his reading, Cayce also made an astonishing claim that the builders of the pyramid were somehow able to make the giant stone blocks float through the air. I mean, like, how else are they going to get them up there, right? Makes total sense. Edgar Cayce said that the structure was built using powers that we don't understand. He said that the ancient Egyptians knew how to float stone in the air, like we know how to float iron on water. And people still wonder if it's levitation, if it's gas balloons. We don't know for sure. I don't think it was gas balloons, but I think levitation. So, Cayce's readings Cayce's readings concerning the ancient past were not limited to just Egypt. He also commented on another topic that is well known to ancient astronaut theorists, the Bible's book of Ezekiel. In this text, the Hebrew prophet Ezekiel describes a fiery chariot with wheels within wheels, descending from the sky in a whirlwind. Edgar Cayce talked about Ezekiel in the Bible and the spinning wheels being a visitation from an extraterrestrial craft. Cayce really seems to include ET in the timeline of human evolution. He talks about extraterrestrials showing up in Mayan times as well. Cayce said that there's undiscovered pyramids in Mexico, which there are. They're starting to pop up thanks to LIDAR, which basically is sonar that reflects light back to the plane, and it takes away all of the foliage so you can see structures underground. So like if you were to look at Mexico or Peru, or, you know, all you see is a canopy of green trees. Well, LIDAR would remove that and actually be able to see the structures, so it's pretty cool. Okay, so he discovered that there are undiscovered pyramids in Mexico, the home of the Mayan Empire. A number of lost pyramids have been discovered in Mexico since that time, and as recently as 2022, archaeologists uncovered the ruins of an ancient Maya city filled with pyramids in the Yucatan Peninsula. What this guy who was speaking finds interesting about Edgar Cayce is the depth and breadth of his insights, his readings, and how it's been corroborated by independent researchers. He not only talked about ancient history and the pyramids, but one particular area of work concerning the Essenes. So the Essenes were Jewish mystics. And they were the order of which Jesus and John the Baptist emerged. In the 1930s, he was discussing the Essenes and telling us what the Essenes believed. Nobody knew anything about this before 1947, so this is all him. No, and then also the Essenes were the one who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. So everything that he was talking about, the Essenes, was corroborated in the Dead Sea Scrolls when they were discovered and translated in 1950s. He also provided additional information. For example, the Essenes were thought to be a monk, a total male driven society, and he actually said no, there were females there, and they found out that was true. He said that better. At the time of the reading, scholars believed that the Essenes were a monastic society composed exclusively of men. However, in 1951, more than 6 years after Cayce's death, archaeologists discovered evidence that Cayce was right. Of course he was. All right. Men and women lived together in the Essene Society. Come to find out, Edgar Cayce and his readings precisely match what the Dead Sea Scrolls said. Is it possible that Edgar Cayce was given a vision of humankind's long lost past? And if so, could there have been a reason this secret knowledge was revealed to him? Perhaps further clues could be found by examining another vision Cayce had concerning ancient Egypt and a secret repository of knowledge hidden beneath the paw of the Sphinx. On July 1st, 1932, while in a trance, Edgar Cayce made an astonishing claim that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built more than 12,000 years ago. He also voiced another, perhaps even more significant revelation when he declared that a secret chamber lies hidden underneath the right paw of the Great Sphinx of Giza. The chamber is said to contain records of a highly advanced lost civilization, the same one that the Greek philosopher Plato wrote about in the 4th century BC, known as Atlantis. The traditional concept of Atlantis is that it's located somewhere out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean beyond the Straits of Gibraltar. Edgar Cayce came along and filled in tremendous gaps and details in his trance-like state. He described Atlantis as this very luxurious and enormously powerful culture. It had advanced technology. The capital city was the center of a circular canals with magnificent bridges that linked the canals that sailing ships could sail under. In Cayce's vision, Atlantis became real. Cayce specifically stated that Atlantis was an actual historical place. He said this lost world was founded by supernatural beings that were extraterrestrial. So he clearly believed or stated that there were other intelligences in the universe that interfaced with humanity. One day, Atlantis sunk, which in geology makes no sense that it would sink and we wouldn't be able to find it. But if you think about how vast the ocean is, and we've only explored like 1% or something, it's not really all that confusing. Maybe there was a storm or whatever that created Atlantis. Maybe it was a war. That destroyed Atlantis. Maybe it was Atlantis. Maybe it was a war. What Edgar Cayce said was that the survivors of Atlantis moved into different parts of the ancient world, and they had to build 3 so-called halls of records. One was to be in what we know today as the Yucatan. Another was to be somewhere in the vicinity of the Bimini Islands in Bahamas. Has anybody heard of the Bimini Road? The structure near the Bahamas, and they said it looks like a road. And the third one was to be in an area that we now know as the Giza Plateau in Egypt. And these were the repositories for all of the knowledge and wisdom of the Atlantean people. So could this prove that Atlantis once existed if we could just get into the Sphinx's foot? We can't. The Egyptian government's like, no, not going to do it. Unfortunately, they did try, though. They placed geophones around the perimeter of the Sphinx and tried to do different things to not have to be invasive. Okay, and from that, we found areas that indicated hollows or chambers or voids within the rock. We found one near the rear of the Sphinx, and we found another one that looks like a tunnel-like structure, basically along the body of the Sphinx. We found a large rectangular chamber-like structure under the left paw of the Sphinx. This was totally unexpected to us. But unfortunately, that's as far as we got. So remote viewing, there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but I feel like I'm going long and I can just hear Betty in my ear. She's like the little angel. Okay, so remote viewing. If Edgar Cayce really did receive information from the so-called Hall of Records beneath the Sphinx, could there be evidence that he was carrying out an extraterrestrial agenda to reveal planet Earth's true past? Ancient astronaut theory says yes, and suggests Cayce was also preparing humankind for the extraordinary future. All right, so since I'm running out of time, I did want to quickly bring up that not only did Edgar Cayce believe that there is life in other planets, he believed we came from other planets. He actually has, gosh, there's so much good stuff. He actually has a rating system for all of the planets and what they mean. And if you ever get an opportunity, check that out because it's really interesting. He also believed in the law of one, which is really, really cool. And I don't have time to tell you about it. So maybe my next talk I will. The law of one is a series of courses that comes from the 1980s. And what it is it is a channeling account from three people when they're speaking to an alien, an extraterrestrial named Ra. Now, Ra is not one person. Ra is many people. And keep in mind, when I told you about Edgar Cayce, we see the body. We can help you with that. We encourage you to do that. When the angel spoke to him, she always said we, and that's why, because Ra is not one, he is many. So in conclusion, thank you guys for your patience. In conclusion, I know those are the favorite words y'all like me to say. Cayce felt that he could turn away nobody, and doing these readings took a terrible toll on his body. He started giving like 8 to 10 readings a day. His youngest son told an interviewer one time that he could see his father's body wasn't doing well with so many readings. You know, if you think about it, you're in a deep trance and you're receiving information, and this information is coming from a very high frequency. So that's like you're on go, 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 go all the time. That would wear you out. It's like you're stepping on the gas nonstop. In September of 1944, he had a series of small strokes, and the reading that he gave himself said that he needed to rest and calm down and not work as hard as he was working. On January 3rd, 1945, Edgar Cayce passed away at the age of 67. In the final year of his life, Cayce performed an astonishing 1,385 readings, and a lot of these were like 85% accuracy. The predictions that he had, it was like at 85%, which is really, really high. Some say that Cayce worked himself to death. This was not a means for him to get rich. It was a means for him to help humanity, to be a conduit of records from a source of universal knowledge that he could share with humanity. Edgar Cayce stated that his purpose in life was to help his fellow humans. When he died, he left behind an enormous archive of psychic readings that are still being studied today, and which some believe could provide important clues about the future. Cayce is also largely credited with introducing the modern world to holistic medicine. He's called the father of holistic medicine because he was one of the first people to really start talking to America about the integration and connection between our bodies, minds, and spirits. He also popularized certain Eastern ideas with which many Americans were unfamiliar, including karma, reincarnation, as well as mind-body connection to medicine. Meditation as a therapeutic tool, everything that you find today on alternative spiritual sense was heightened in the public awareness through Edgar Cayce's readings. He said that people had to fix their thinking, and you have to have higher help. You needed your mind in the right attitude. It needs to be expectant. And you needed some of the life force of the spirit flowing better. He believed that the holistic approach to life was not only beneficial to a person's health, but might also lead to more people awakening their own innate psychic abilities and learning to access a higher realm of knowledge, just as he did. Einstein said, you know, Einstein always pops up in my talks, sorry. Einstein said all existence is energy, and that energy is being interconnected through the ether. I think Edgar was correct when he says that you can tap into all sorts of information through the ether. But this is not science in a lab. We're talking about a state of consciousness. Edgar Cayce has spoken about reaching a new level of holism. higher mental state, higher vibrational state of the body, and more spirituality. Even though he was a Christian, his teachings were way beyond Christianity. They pick up on Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, and Kabbalah teachings. As humans become more enlightened, they can still get new information from Cayce files. I invite you to check out any of the 14,000 readings either online or at the ARE Center in Virginia Beach for yourself and learn more about this incredible man, his sensational visions, and study his good old-fashioned advice that you have to maintain your mind, body, and spirit to be whole. Thanks for listening. Namaste.